Hey everyone. So this is going to be a really important topic. This is going to be probably some of the most value dense topics that you'll find around the whole topic of building and growing SaaS. If you could understand these fundamentals, you are going to basically know everything from launching your SaaS business to scaling it and beyond. So what right do I have to talk about this particular topic? Well, my name is Jihad Iqbal. I'm the CEO founder of Liberate Labs, and we are a SaaS growth consultancy for over a dozen plus startups at this point. All the way from early stage to scaling past 6 million in ARR. We have specialized in building SaaS as well as growing and scaling it. And so I've seen dozens of founders of what they're doing right and what they could have done better, and seeing all those patterns made me realize there's some really core concepts that really need to be emphasized. And so my goal is to just dump it all in here. And so for any early mid-stage founder that is kind of either thinking about building a SaaS business or the plateaued in their current one, or if you're doing just fine, I think it's good principles to have regardless. So let's jump into it. So let's talk about this main concept that I'm talking about. I'm referring to a sort of growth engine, and this growth engine, I'm going to really break it down for you into a visual. So particularly, I want you to think of a house, and this house really starts with our foundations, and these foundations include what? They include things like mindset, and approach. How do you even think about this topic as a whole? And why I'm starting here at this foundations is that this mindset and approach is really not talked about enough. The reason being is that it's kind of a little bit ambiguous, a little bit philosophical, but I think it's one of the core pieces about what is the mindset of growing SaaS. The reality is that SaaS founders who are repeat founders are getting funded almost immediately if they've previously exited or their previous startup. And the reason is why? Well, that's because they have figured something out in their mindset and approach that is able to be replicated across other SaaS businesses. So if we can really encapsulate and internalize this mindset and approach, well, you're going to be able to move a lot faster. So this is really important foundations here. Kind of stack on here is 3 layers after that. And these are a lot more probably familiar to you. One is talking about strategy, right? Your product strategy of what your offer is, who you're targeting, where in the market are you, your positioning, what your offer is, things like that. And off of that, you'll build your go-to-market. How are you planning on distributing your product to your product, the actual thing, the product that you are building, right? The building and the scaling of this is very intentional, right? So the goal is that these are stacking on top of each other. If you have your foundation, right, this enables the strategy, your strategy enables the go-to-market, and your go-to-market enables your product. All right. So this is all very intentional on top of each other, not linear, but certainly it will be something that helps you do it. This kind of one last thing I'll put out here is the backbone of this this growth engine, if you will, and this is ops. This ops is related to how all these different pieces are fitting in together. All right. Particularly when you think about the feedback loops that exist in your product, in your SaaS business, and any business really, there is going to be a lot of loops of information coming in from all your activities, these outputs that need to be inputted back into your actions, your strategy, your go-to-market, your product. So really, truly, what we're talking about here is this continuous cycle in this core area of, conducting actions, executing, getting that feedback, and then that really then being ingested back into the action. So this loop is where the operational loop is, as I pointed out, right? We need to establish a connection between each of these, and operations is meant to be the backbone, the glue that's holding everything together. And obviously it's a continuous exercise. So this is a very high level look at, this growth engine, as I call it. And I think a lot of times where people make mistakes is that they think that there's a hack. There's one simple thing. If you just do this, if you get just the right offer, you attach the just exact pain, you're gonna just explode, right? Or if you have enough conviction, it's gonna happen. The reality is, if SaaS building was easy, everyone would be successful. But the reason is, and why there's such a high failure rate, is that there are a lot of pieces kind of fitting in together, some more important than others at different stages, in different markets and verticals at different times, that allow the SaaS business to be successful. So this is to say that like there is complexity here, but it's not complexity that is unknown. If you do it in the correct process and the correct steps, you are going to be able to increase your chances of being successful, and particularly driving growth, which is traction, engagement, revenue in your business consistently. All right. So, I really want to emphasize this kind of fundamental of this growth engine. And so this just is not an abstract thought. I really want to bring it into tactics, right? Of exactly what is the culture, what is the mindset that we're trying to create. Okay. What is the strategy that we will implement, right? The positioning, segmentation, we're going to get into a lot more detail here. We're going to get into go to market. How do we choose the right distribution channels? How do we even frame and message our SaaS product in the right way? To then thinking about the product, thinking about the customer journey, and how to get them to, convert. How do you get them to pay for the subscription? How do you get them to upgrade? How do you get them to stay and retain within the product? How do you prevent churn, right? So there's a lot of things that are going on there as well that we'll talk about. And as I mentioned before, the operations of this interaction between these layers is particularly making sure that there's a feedback loop, right? Operations, to me, the core growth operations is feedback, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. So let's get into the first kind of layer here in detail, right? Talking about mindset. Man, mindset is so important, and it just doesn't get talked up enough, right? I think there's a lot of, fluff out there, particularly talking in terms of, wake up at 5 a.m., dunk your face in ice water. But really, like, I want you to have a bit of different thinking around it, all right? The mindset of a founder, right, of a really effective founder, like if you had to really decompose like the idea of what a founder is really doing, and there's a lot of flashiness out there of, these founders who, embody over index on certain features of being an asshole, being this, and super aggressive. But actually, I think that there is other things that are flying under the radar that make for a really effective founder. And one of the big things, this is something that's repeated a lot in YC particularly. I have this experience with my own brother who just finished his winter batch at YC, and we were just talking about it. One like really core concept that they want in their cohorts and their founders is what's called truth seekers. Truth seekers are particularly founders who are not interested in believing their own bullshit or the bullshit of others, right? So like the real kind of essence is, what is the real truth of the market? What is the real truth of the customer? What are they really experiencing? And not taking other people's feedback or their own biases as the truth. The goal is to seek it out, right? How do you seek out the truth? Well, the way you seek out the truth is through talking with customers, right? There's really no other way. All right. This is just a fundamental fact, right? You need to engage the market. You need to sit in their shoes. You need to live it, breathe it. You need to be able to experience as close to possible what is actual truth of their experience. And this small piece of the mindset, I really want to make clear how simple it is, but also how difficult it is, because it's hard. It is hard work to be with your customers and really talk to them and really understand it. It is not work that you can automate away. It's not work that can just basically be a Google search or a ChatGPT web search, deep research even can uncover. It is this empathy with the user, with the customer and their experience that needs to be found out. And ultimately, this putting the ego aside and really thinking about like, am I actually accurate here? Am I actually thinking about this in the right way? Is this the actual truth of the matter? This is the things that will really iterate you towards the right direction. And if you don't have this, no matter how much money or time or energy you put, if you believe other people's assumptions, or you believe your own, you will never go in the right direction. All right, you will be veered off in other directions, in dead ends, in tar pits that will not get you to where you want to go. Here's another fact of being a founder at a SaaS startup that is not saturated with money. And actually money at the earliest stages actually does more to hurt a business than to help it. And let me explain why. Ultimately, the superpower of a startup is how agile it is. All right. A SaaS startup basically between a large company, a small company to a large company, what you will find is that particularly the degree of focus a company can do declines dramatically the larger it gets. All right. The reason is that the more types of functions, services, products, markets, things that it can provide, the amount of focus it has will reduce. This is just a fact. This is a fact of being an enterprise versus a startup, right? And so why can startups end up beating these large companies? Well, you know exactly why. It's because they're able to double down and focus on the most important things, most important niche things that the larger markets, all right, are not able to focus on. All right, they're stuck in their own size that they just basically need to acquire to basically obtain that focus that was there. And usually what happens is once they acquire them, well, they're just basically back in the same position, but maybe additional market share in a gap that they weren't able to cover before, right? So really, this is intrinsic. This is first principles. This is one of the most important things to understand is that your ability to focus and narrow and niche down is actually exactly what makes you effective and powerful at what you do. And so effectively, this other point that I'm trying to make about mindset is that you need to focus, right? And maybe you've heard this before. Maybe you heard this before, but I really want you to focus on a few channels, all right? Few plays and get it right versus getting a lot of channels done, right? A lot of different attempts at different distribution channels, Facebook ads, content, email, doing a bunch of different things and getting them wrong. All right. So this is one of the most common issues, right? Not just even channels, but even features, even scope, right? I want to do this, and that, right? I'm the player that's going to put everything together, right? Well, you have to think that like if it was that easy of just putting a bunch of different features and consolidating it into one thing, why don't the larger companies do it? Well, the issue is it's very, very difficult to do it well. All right. Because of the lack of focus, you're here basically trying to compete with larger companies who are a suite of products that basically do everything, a HubSpot, a Salesforce, whatnot. And you're going to lose that battle. You're going to lose that battle every single time, because if your battle is to be as large as possible, as a small company with fewer resources, with less brand, you're going to lose that battle against larger companies that actually do have that brand and the resources to play in that game, right? So the goal is, particularly mindset wise, what are a few features? What is a narrow focus? What is a niche segment that you could double down on and get it right? Okay. So this is what I would like you to do as a founder. And finally, so along the similar lines, what makes a startup special in terms of its focus, in terms of its ability to be much more narrow, is also its experimental velocity. So the reason why this is special, particularly for a startup, is that you can try and fail without it being a huge deal, right? You could build and launch and get feedback and close the loop of what you need to do, whether you should iterate in this direction or we should scrap it and do something else. You can do that because you're a startup. Enterprises, I worked at Amazon for a very long time, and to get a single feature out, it could be as simple as a drop down in a major website could take months, if not years. All right, years to get a major feature out, right? And it's not because it's technical complexity, it's because of the amount of bureaucracy and stakeholders. And you know what, especially at that scale, maybe it's necessary, right? But for a startup, you're able to do things so much faster. And so the real question becomes, right, how fast can you learn? Because the way I'll frame it is experiments is the same thing as learning, right? All I'm saying is a proxy, right? Experiments and failure, right? You being able to test messaging, being able to test features out, being able to make new plays and try to do stretches in different directions that a larger company or even a mid-sized company will not be able to do. So, your goal is like, how can you launch quick experiments that will give you information to do the next thing, right? And, a lot of people think about experiments as being very heavy. It has to be perfect. But, experiments can be formed a lot through the conversations you're having, intuitions and other things. The main goal is, can you leverage it in a way that's going to be beneficial? Can you actually learn from it? I mentioned this already in the ops, but particularly you need to emphasize your feedback loops, right? These experiments are really going to be the things that if you can really focus around, right? These feedback loops, these are the things that's going to drive the exponential growth of a startup, right? You're able to take the learnings and have them compound, and then you could double down on what is working ditch the rest. And over time, particularly, you're going to be able to do a lot more effective things that it would take an enterprise or even a mid-sized company a lot longer to figure out. So particularly, I want you to notice I have not mentioned a single growth hack. All right. There is no such thing as a growth hack. All right. I really want to get this through your head. If there was a guaranteed way to grow your SaaS, well, it would have been out there already. People would have all been using it. But the fact is, really, the key things, the engine, right, if you will, like the real clear thinking, okay, that is creating the right outputs for ultimately doing the right thing, is coming from the right inputs, right? The right inputs is very much dependent on you being able to embody the right principles, as I mentioned before, right? So, talking about the mindset and reiterating it, being a truth seeker, thinking about what is the actual reality, what is the user really trying to do, what are they feeling? Having a growth mindset. The growth mindset is particularly around the focus, being able to really think about what is going to be the most ROI, the highest leverage activities, and then spending the time to really get it done. Because ultimately, like, when you start on something and it's not working, well, that is what you should be going in with that assumption with. But if you can keep on iterating, keep on doing the learning, keep on finding out what is working and what is not working, and doubling down on these channels, right? Eventually you can make it work. But what I will guarantee you is that if you try a bunch of different channels, a bunch of different features, a bunch of different segments of who you're targeting, you will not get to the conclusion. Right, you will not get enough data, a significant sample set of data, to actually know whether you are in the right direction or not. Right, you need a significant enough of information and try it hard enough on a channel before pivoting to know that this is actually not working out. Right, so how do you find out? Is through your experimentation, getting the data, getting the feedback loops, and understanding whether it's working out or not. So I start here because without these types of really critical pillars, with all the founders that I've been working, you cannot replace these mindset for success. The startup founders that have consistently had the most difficult time is that they are explicitly or consciously or unconsciously not embodying these principles. So I really want you to take those seriously. All right. So what's next, right? Let's talk a little bit about strategy. Let's talk about this huge buzzword, strategy, right? And the word strategy is like so overused that it's almost useless, right? It becomes something that people are just saying all the time: strategy, strategy, strategy. But the main issue with strategy for most cases is it doesn't help you make decisions. No strategy is useful if it does not help you make decisions. And the goal of your SaaS, your product strategy, is that everything that you do afterwards, whether you're doing your go-to-market or you're doing your product building, whatever you're doing, your messaging, all of these things will be built on top of what we are talking about right now, which is your strategy, right? So to take a step back, right, again, to put it in context of our growth engine, right, we already talked about the foundations. We already talked about the mindset and the approach required. And these are fundamentals. This is what's going to always be the base. If you do not have the correct approach of executing with focus, with experiments in mind, and rapidly figuring out what is the niche, what is the wedge that you have that you only can deliver on. The thing that gets delivered on top of that is your product strategy. What are you building? Who are you building it for? Where in the market is it going to be located? So I want to spend a little bit of time of talking about the principles of strategy. And I want to first talk about it from the point of finding the pain, right? And there's a really incredible concept that if you can internalize, it's going to be the thing that is going to be the North Star for your product moving forward. This, as a founder, will create clarity for the rest of your team for every other action you're going to take. And particularly what I want you to visualize is that your ICP, your customer profile, is sitting on a cliff. And man, he or she is in pain. All right. They are in this current state, and in this current state, they are looking, all right, towards this dream outcome, right? They're thinking of themselves on the beach with their sunglasses, and they're just chilling, right? Don't pay attention to my stick drawings, pay attention to my words. And so the idea is that they are in this dream vacation, right? They are chilling, right? They are looking in this direction, but they're only seeing like what they could be, but they're not seeing how to get there, right? They're thinking about like, what would it take to go over this current state? They don't know. What they do know is that they are stuck in this position, right? They are stuck in this pain. They want to be in a better situation, but they are stuck in here, right? Your job as a founder is to build the bridge, right? Ultimately, you need to build this bridge that's going to let them get from their current state into this ideal state. All right. So, this ideal state is particularly like the what you're selling, right? Ultimately, this feeling, this it's not value propositions, it's not features, you're not selling services. What you're selling is a feeling of, if you're frustrated before, what you're really selling is relaxation afterwards. If you're feeling overwhelmed in one sense, you the dream and the ideal is feeling lighter and feeling relaxed on the other end. So I really want you to internalize the feeling. And feelings, while this soft, ambiguous term, is really the core of what's going to make you think about strategy in the right way. Because ultimately, if you don't understand the pain in this current situation, what that current situation is, you're not going to basically be able to uh, solve it. All right. So I want you to think about then this bridge. Like, what is this bridge? This bridge is the job to be done. All right. If you haven't heard it before, it is one of the most important topics that you should internalize immediately. Job to be done. All right. The job to be done really is, what is the actual action? What is the work that needs to be done? Your product is being hired to do. So this framework can be applied to any product and any service. All right. Because we try to almost envision our product in this abstract notion, but literally, if anyone is paying money to use your product, right? It's to get a job done. It is to get something done in their current life, whether it's a B2B or B2C, there's something that they want to get done, right? So why do people hire Tinder? I want you to think about that for a second. Why would an individual hire Tinder? Well, they want to get dates. They want to meet people. They want to create relationships, or, something casual. It does not matter exactly what products, features, services that Tinder offers. Ultimately, there needs something to get done to go from their ideal state, from this pain of, using the Tinder example, loneliness and frustration, and they want to be on the other end. They want to feel liked. They want to feel popular. They want to feel, that they're getting a lot of attention, right? They want some physical satisfaction out of it, right? Of meeting the people that they want to meet. So ultimately, like, whatever you're talking about here, is it needs to be in the context of a job being done. Your product does not exist out of the current reality of the person that you're trying to sell to. I want to repeat that again. Your product does not exist outside of the reality of what the individual is experiencing. Okay. Meaning that if your product does not fit into the current view of their world, all right, and their reality, if you don't build your marketing, your strategy around it, your product around it, it will be ignored. And that's what happens. Most founders get ignored when they build something, because they're thinking of this product, but really their product exists in a different dimension from the problem that the persona is experiencing, right? They see the problem and they're like, you know what? I don't really need it. These are the things that you need to look out for. These words, I don't know what it's used for. I don't know what I need it for. Like I don't know if I'd pay for it. Or it's interesting, but I don't think I need it, right? These are the most common words. Or I don't understand. I don't understand what you're selling. And the reason being is that you are not working backwards from ultimately the experience of the persona that you're selling to. And you're not asking, why would they hire your product? What are the alternatives that they're doing? Obviously, they're living, they're surviving somehow. Someone is finding dates one way or another their own way, right? But why would they hire your product? Why would they hire your service? This is the job that needs to get done and needs to be framed in such a way that they can see exactly like, hey, actually, if I do hire this product, then I can get to my vacation, right? So this vacation is a feeling. This vacation is ultimately what you're trying to drive them towards, but you really need to internalize this, all right? So the reason I bring this up is because finding the right pain point, the JTBD, the job to be done, is contingent on you like internalizing this situation of your customer, your prospect is sitting in the pain, being able to articulate what is the bridge, the job that you are providing that will get them to this ideal situation. All right. So hopefully this is providing a clear sort of framework for you. So I want you to think about something else, right? Which is positioning. Positioning is where in the market are you, right? So imagine you have this X dimension, let's call it speed, and let's call the other one quality, right? This is just another dimension. This is just a very general kind of way of looking at potentially a market. All right. So when looking at the market, right, you may say that, hey, well, this product is high on quality, but low on speed. You could say there's another product that could be lower in quality, but it can be very much faster than what's out there in the market. And then you could frame yourself somewhere in between, right? Maybe you're saying that, hey, I want to be the solution that is actually delivering much higher on the speed, but we're delivering a much higher quality. So this is your positioning in the market. But let me warn you, and this is really important. This is really on the topic of vanity positioning. Vanity positioning is when you create straw man arguments of these products and basically frame yourself as the best, right? Hey, yeah, these products are, lower quality or lower speed, but my product is amazing. It does everything, right? The reason why this is an issue is that when a customer, a prospect is choosing between your competitors, between the market, the positioning might very well sometimes be like, your competitor could be something like an Excel spreadsheet. Your competitor could be just doing it themselves, right? But more importantly, it's to say that when you are positioning yourself, is this actually how your customer is viewing the market, right? Maybe they're looking at this or competitor over here, but they're really choosing them for these XYZ features, these additional features that this has, not necessarily that it's lower quality but higher speed, right? The framing has to be in the context of the ICP, of how they're looking at the jobs that need to be done, and particularly what is the available solutions in the market and what are the dimensions in which they are making decisions, right? And your ability to hone in on the niche that is going to really be underserved in the market, but there's a lot of people who are looking, or there's a segment of the market that is looking for an alternative in this way, is ultimately how you can position yourself effectively. All right. So let me repeat that again. Your positioning in the market is not just relative to the dimensions in which you're differentiating on, but also like what is the actual options in the market that you may not be considering other than products. It could be just doing the current way or using an Excel spreadsheet, whatever it may be. And you'll be surprised how many times the competitor is just a spreadsheet. But also secondly is to say, is this the dimensions in which actual prospects are going to make the decision on, right? Maybe they don't want more quality and more speed. Maybe they want less price point, right? So you you could see how well you could position yourself. Yeah, we have the most quality, the most speed, but the hidden dimension that you're not thinking about is price. And price is really where people are trying to get something else on, right? So this again depends on your insights on the customer and being able to internalize what they need. All right, let's talk about a few things here, right? So particularly what I want you to think about here is the competitor analysis. This is one of the key things that doesn't get done. When you're forming your strategy, how do you know where you are in the market if you don't know who's in the market, right? And not just the other products and solutions, but also what are they doing right now? Because they're doing something. It's not that people with problems, active problems, are just sitting around doing nothing. There is a current way of doing things that is also your competitor, right? So understanding that and positioning effectively against it will be important. Another thing I want you to get into your head is around this concept of tar pit ideas. Tar pit ideas are ideas in which, people end up not really understanding you're this amalgamation of different things of like you're not as high quality as another option, you're not as fast, and you're what's called stuck in the middle, particularly when it comes to the available solutions in the market. You are just simply like average, you are not really differentiated, you're kind of a jack of all trades, you're doing basically a little bit of everything. But if you think about it, the people that really care about quality are going to choose quality, the highest quality option. They're not going to, they'll sacrifice on speed, they'll sacrifice on budget. Those who really care about speed will maybe sacrifice a lot on quality and sacrifice budget, right? But if there's no prospect that will really effectively make a decision, basically being like, you know what, I want an average. I want like an average quality and average speed, right? What happens is that this stuck in the middle is not that people would not be necessarily interested, right? But it's not compelling enough for people to make a decision. All right. These are also what I refer to as like tar pit ideas. This is a YC thing that was mentioned a couple times. But the tar pit is basically when you're kind of like in this period of like getting stuck, where you're kind of doing this idea that is very, very difficult to execute on for a number of reasons. And while on the surface, it looks okay, right? It looks like a deal. Hey, why not just get an average? Why not maybe us just be in the middle, right? Which is, it looks like clear space. But the reality is, when you have an ICP, they're not going to make a decision on the average. They're going to make a decision based on like really like what is the most important for them and them going into that extreme. And you cannot differentiate effectively on being an average. Okay. You don't look at one option A and basically be like, hey, choose me. I'm like the more average all arounder in this scenario, right? Unless you could really hone in on the dimensions that people really care about, I don't want you to get stuck in the middle. So I just want you to be aware of that, especially when it comes to your positioning. What else do I want to talk about, right? So segmentation, all right? Segmentation is a lot about who you are targeting. So segmentation is really another really key concept. Segmentation conflated a lot with this concept of like personas, right? And we all seen it before, right? Personas is this picture of this person, and then you have a bio, and you're like saying that, hey, they're doing these things, blah blah blah. These things are probably one of the most useless things you could do. A persona is not what buys your product. It's a real human being. And ultimately, the attributes that is being detailed here do not matter if the attributes do not directly contribute to a buy decision. All right. So I'm going to repeat this. They do not matter if it does not contribute to a buy decision, does not contribute. All right. Contribute to what? Buy decision, right? Because what happens is that we get caught up in these abstractions, right? And you'll have all these like details of like, I'm 6'2". I am in this location. I am in this personality. I'm doing this in the morning. It does not matter. It does not matter, because ultimately, what does that have to do with them buying your product? So ultimately, like what you're trying to get to in your segmentation, who are you targeting, is ultimately like, what is it that they would contribute towards in making a buy decision, right? So, if we were to do an example of going back to Tinder, let's do a quick segmentation. As you sit and you think deeply about what is a type of individual, what are the dimensions that would really drive a decision of who would be the most interested in Tinder, right? You're thinking, let's say you're head of product, you're the CEO of Tinder, right? And you're just thinking like, what is the people that we want to target? Who are we trying to target? You would think about what are the key levers, the key qualities in an individual that would make them more interested in a dating app versus not, right? And one thing that immediately pops up to me, I'll give you a second to think about it, is age, young versus old. If you're older, you are less likely to be single. You're less likely to be dating around. You'll be less likely to wanting to meet a lot of people. You're going to be more likely more settled. You don't want to deal with as many things, right? So, you think about who you want to target. Definitely a dimension to consider is for the age. All right. And you can get more detailed than this into age groups, right? You really can segment this much, much further. It doesn't have to be a 4x4. It could easily be a 2x6, right? Instead of a 2x2, it could be a 2x6. But I'm just painting an example here, right? Another dimension I want you to think about, and this goes right into like why Tinder is designed the way it is do you want to spend a lot of time uh basically dealing creating a profile and engaging on a lot of different other profiles, or do you want something quick, right? So there's other dating profiles before Tinder, right? There's OkCupid and all these other types of dating profiles that I'm too young to know about, but basically like creating a lot of time to set up a profile and doing all these things, right? Is that something that of who we want to target? Like people who are very serious, they're looking for very serious relationships, so they want as much detail as possible. Well, I'm thinking more about fast versus slow. Another dimension could be short term versus long term, right? um Tinder is very much designed, if you can guess, for segmentation along these dimensions for young people who want to do short term and very quick actions, right? Like they want to meet people very quickly and they want to basically be able to make a lot of engagements happen very quickly. People are not on Tinder for getting married, all right? And you certainly don't have a lot of old people on the platform either trying to basically settle down, right? Tinder is very much an app for young people who are trying to move quickly. So I'm trying to just give an example of like how this segmentation affects uh, your overall strategy, of like, who are you trying to build for? And this strategy is very much like, as I pointed out, this core exercise that will decide now how you message, what distribution channel you should use, what product should you build, your user experience and the operations that are associated with it. So hopefully this is like painting a bit of a clear example of what really real strategy is. And you could see how useless personas are. This does not really give you any, like a persona doesn't really matter. What you really need to key on is what is the key dimensions that influence what the buy decision. I mentioned before, don't do useless personas. So ultimately, when you do all these different things, right, and you put it into your strategy, it should become so laser focused about I do X for Y so that you can get this outcome, right? Uh, I am doing X, which is your job that you are automating away for who, so that you are solving this payment, this pain, you're creating this feeling. All right. So let's get into the next area, right? Now we're kind of getting into the tactical steps, right? The actual execution that's required here, right? Into the market, rather, the go to market and then the product. All right. All right. Let's talk about go to market. This is one of the most important steps actually about this is literally the core of this growth engine. There's a reason why I put it right here in the middle. This is basically everything that circles around this go to market, because ultimately it does not matter if you build the most incredible product that is the fanciest technology or has the coolest AI features, whatever it may be, if it cannot get into the hands of the customer. All right. If customers are not visibly seeing it, resonating with it, choosing to click on it, buy it, download it, whatever the case is, it doesn't matter. And so the go to market here is absolutely crucial. And the sort of components of go to market is in two parts, right? One is the messaging. I'll get into, like, who being able to frame your product so clearly, so concisely, in a way that your prospects would care about it, and then being able to distribute it, choosing the right channels to basically convey that message, whether it's cold email or ads or content, however it may be. I want you to start building a mental frame for it. So how do we do that, right? So I want to introduce a concept to you. It's a way to basically conceptualize what a product can be framed as, how to make it as simple and clear as possible. I borrowed some of the most brilliant frameworks from some amazing people, and I'll be looking forward to share it. And then I want you to have some frameworks for choosing the right distribution channels. Starting with what? A product marketing canvas. This is a concept by Fletch PMM. They are incredible. They are specialized in particularly. So this canvas is introduced by a team called Fletch PMM. All right, these guys are incredible. They specialize in positioning. They specialize in messaging, and they're the most incredible people at it. And particularly, what they introduced in this canvas is a way to frame a product, frame a service, right? And so a great example is Canly in this situation, where they basically talk about who they're selling to, right? Starting with the target customer, right? For Canly, it would be sales team scheduling multiple video calls per day, right? It becomes a really intense exercise. This was actually the initial positioning for Calendly, right? Obviously, it's grown a lot there, but you could see how niche they were in the beginning and where it went from. So being for sales team to be able to schedule multiple video calls per day, right? This is a proper segmentation. This is a proper who, right? What is a job that they're trying to do? They're trying to schedule multiple video calls per day. That's basically it. It's not like rocket science. The product category is a scheduling automation tool. The category is important because the category is what frames your position, right? So when someone wants to understand your product in a few words, it's just a scheduling automation tool, right? So it's important to categorize it. But what is the main problem here, and what is the main solution, the capability that's enabling it, right? So the question becomes, when manually coordinating sales calls with prospects, you're wasting a lot of back and forth, if you remember, on emails. Hey, does this time work? Or are you available this time? Or here's my availability, and choose a thing, right? So all this friction is dealing with calls not being booked for sales meetings. So the idea becomes, how can you book a sales meeting with a single link? All right. This framework talks about it in a couple ways of like current ways they are doing different things, right? In this main capability, what are the current ways that they're trying to solve for it right now? What is the current job? Well, they're sending emails back and forth. Well, they're going between their calendar and their email. They're coordinating with their team members and their availabilities, right? So what happens is that in the current way of doing things, you're identifying the problem and the sub capability of the main problem that is solving it. And ultimately, what this informs is the features. So if you think about how this really then gets accumulated into our messaging, this is really, really important. Being able to clearly convey something in a few words that is immediately resonating with your target prospect is the most as close to growth hack as I can get to. If you can get to a sale pitch that is as concise as this, as focused as this, and when you put it in front of someone, they're like, I need that. That is as close to of a growth hack because it sells itself. The positioning and the messaging sells itself, because when they see this, when they realize like, yeah, damn, like I am dealing with like all these sales calls and it's so annoying. You're telling me I can book a sales meeting in one click, and then I see the features being able to deal with it, then it's like it makes everything else 10 times easier. So I really would love for you to take this framework. Shout out to Fletch PMM again, but to be able to take this framework and make sure that is your homepage, is your landing page as clear as this. If it's anything less than that, you're gonna have some difficulties. All right. So I highly, highly encourage you to get to this point. So let's say you get your messaging right. And I really want to put out this as well. If your messaging sucks, it does not matter what distribution channel. Your messaging is what's going to be distributed, and shitty messaging getting distributed across your ads, around your email, around your content, around your landing page, whatever it may be, ultimately will be less effective because the messaging sucks. So if you cannot get your messaging right, you need to really think about this. You need to really think about what is your product, what is your framing, what is your positioning, who you're targeting, and getting very narrow and focused and specific. All right. If you want me to talk a little bit more about this, let me know. I can certainly open up this topic in other places as well. So let's say your messaging is, you feel is good enough, right? And you know what? Your messaging will not be perfect to start. And that's okay. You launch, you run experiments, you get feedback, and you get more information to get better and better. That is the point. There's no point in this where you will be perfect, right? It takes a lot of iteration. It takes a lot of experimentation to really get there. But I just want you to really think about what could possibly be the thing that unlocks things for you. All right. So let's talk about how you choose the right distribution channel. So this is from a great book called Traction. And they have this thing called Bullseye Framework. And the Bullseye Framework is a way to design to particularly help you be able to choose the right distribution channel. All right. When I say distribution channel, it means that how do you distribute your product, your message, your sales copy into the eyeballs of your target audience, right? There's a bunch of ways to do it, right? We've talked about this like a bunch. In terms of like talking about some options is like things like ads, things like SEO, blogs. You have direct sales, you have offline ads, which could be like newspapers, right? You can have offline events, conferences, you can have email marketing. So there's just a bunch of different things. And some of these are easier than others. But the main thing is, and the main question is that how do you accomplish two things mainly? How do you get in front of your ICP? Not all your ICP, your ideal customers, right? The people you're trying to target will exist. If you're trying to sell Tinder, would you go on newspapers? Probably not, because if you remember our segmentation, we said we want to target young people who want things very quickly, right? They're not going to be on newspapers. No matter how hard you try, it's not going to be a distribution channel that's effective for you. But if you think about a different product that's for more older audiences who, let's say, want to keep up with the news and they're old school, right? And you need like, a nursing home, or you're selling nursing homes, right? Maybe newspaper could be something effective, right? You want to get in the eyeballs of the people where people live, right? And so ultimately, you have to think about how to get in front of your ICP. And the other thing is, how do you stand out? Okay. Some channels that are less utilized, obviously you are not the only one thinking. Let's say you have competitors in the market and they know the ICP that you're targeting really lives on Instagram, right? Well, Instagram may have a ton of different ads about the same product against each other. And so it's going to be much harder. It's a saturated channel naturally, because it's going to have where the customers are living in. So it may be difficult to stand out. So that's where other channels that are less popular could become a way of differentiating. All right. So maybe going to speaking engagements, going to universities and talking about it, or doing some type of viral marketing, right? Do something unconventional to get eyeballs, right? Red Bull does it all the time. Red Bull is doing all these crazy stunts, and you may wonder, like, how is this driving sales? Well, when people are thinking about energetic things and about like action and being living an active lifestyle, they'll just remember these crazy stunts that that Red Bull pulled off, right? So it becomes this thing of association, and it becomes a brand, and it culminates, right? So the way the bullseye framework works is that particularly when you think about particularly what I just mentioned, your ICP and standing out, the question becomes, what are the various channels that could work in this way? And then being able to launch some quick experiments. Remember, as a startup, you're not going to be able to do all these things, and neither should you. They're not going to yield all the same results. 20% of these channels are going to yield 80% of the results, right? So how do you launch some quick experiments and see how that can, what kind of data you get around it? And then I want you to narrow down into 2 or 3 channels that is the most effective. And you know what? If you just had to focus on one channel, because honestly, each of these channels is a whole job in of itself. All right. My team does a lot of these channels ourselves, right? Email marketing, ads, content, we've done it. And it took us years to get proficient at it. Okay. So, consider that it's not easy. Consider that it's going to require quite a bit of time investment. What do you want to focus on, right? It's hard to tell what are the channels that's going to really take off, right? So this is why launching a few quick experiments can do it. But it's also to say these quick experiments would require a lot of volume to really get the data that you're looking for, right? Doing email marketing and you sending out even just like 5K, 5,000 emails is not going to be enough. You need to send at least around 20K emails um, around different value messaging and different propositions and different angles and different target lists to basically be able to understand, like, does email marketing even work for you? You need to get enough of a significant sample set of data of quality and quantity of data points to indicate whether this is a meaningful enough channel for you. So just note that you have to be very selective, and you have to give each of these channels the time it deserves, starting from the most likely to succeed to not, to really figure it out. And if you are basically you finding results with one channel, immediately just double down on it. You don't have the time and the resources most likely to pursue a lot of different things and to do it well. All right. So this is going back to the growth principles. So what I want you to do is, if something is working, double, triple, quadruple down and max it out as far as you can, as much as you can, because that is going to yield the greatest ROI for you. So, take a look at the Traction Bullseye framework. It's a fantastic framework for just thinking about it. But really, going back to this sort of empathizing with your user, right, is think about where do they get their information from? Where is a place where you can stand out, right? And if you can get where they live and be someone that is actually unique amongst your market to be able to market to them, you're gonna explode 100%. Obviously guaranteed that your messaging is also positioned well. You're gonna, if your messaging is there and you're one of one in a unique place where your ICP is living, you are going to explode. There is no way you cannot. But it's easier said than done, as most people is smart, and they will also have figured out, hey, I can get in front of people very easily in this channel. But that's where, once you go into that channel, you differentiate further, you do better research, you find better ways to narrow down and hit a subset of that market that's not being addressed, and you just double down on it and you keep on going from there. So hopefully this is making sense, and a meaningful framework around how you do your go to market, right? You ultimately try to make sure that your messaging is correct, and you then choose the right channel. You double down on, you experiment with a couple channels, and you double down on what's working, right? If you need more help in terms of finding out about which distribution channel you should choose, definitely I could talk about this for hours, right? Versus high ticket versus low ticket, B2B versus B2C. High trust versus low trust. There's just so much to get into here. Like I said, it's a whole expertise in of itself. So we do a lot of work in it. If you want to talk a little bit more about it, definitely message in the comments. I'm happy to get more into detail around it. You did it. Customers are somehow you have acquired customers into your product. Maybe you already have a bunch of customers into your product. It's one of the most difficult things, right? To get cold traffic to people who don't know anything about you or your product, to paying you money for it. It's an incredible achievement in its own right to accomplish. A lot of other things needed to go right in terms of dealing with the right pain point, to then being able to message effectively, and then choose the right distribution channel in some way or another to get people to try to use your product and then pay you for it. Amazing. So what happens after that? Well, the journey is not done. The journey is never done. And that's because once a customer is in your product, they're going through another journey, right? Before that, it's the journey to get into it. And I want to talk a little bit about the funnel there. But ultimately, you have to do things to keep them in the product and paying for it, right? This is something we refer to as, a lot of people know about it, customer lifetime value. How much as a customer gonna pay you over the lifetime of living inside your product, and that's going to be primarily on how much are they going to pay you over a period of time, right? So ultimately, if people are coming into your product and then either not choosing to pay you at all, right? They come in, they're like, I don't need it, and they leave, or they pay for your product and maybe only stay for a short period of time and they churn out, meaning they leave your product. You're really like minimizing the CLV, the lifetime value of the customer. And ultimately, this will reduce the overall revenue of your product, which is no good, right? Obviously, your product is made to make some money, right? Ultimately to get investment or scale, whatever it may be. So there is a funnel, a framework in which you can think about how you should be structuring your customer journey. All right. And this customer journey is the top level of this product, right? As I mentioned before, there's a lot of things you need to get right really before you're prioritizing the product, because ultimately nothing about the customer journey inside the product matters if there's no one in the product. Right. So ultimately, everything up to this point is to really get people into the product. But then what? So there's this concept called the pirate metrics, right? Why did they call it pirate metrics? Well, it's what pirates are saying, right? So ultimately, see what I did there? Talking about is activation, or sorry, rather acquisition. How do you call users find you? To activation, how do they experience the value? And this is, I really want to hone in on this one. A lot of people don't fully internalize this piece, but they may acquire customers, they may get people in, but how quickly, based on their onboarding, are they getting the value? All right, this is a really important question to ask yourself as a founder right now. What is the time to value? But from the point they sign up, what are they experiencing in your product? How long does it take for them to feel like, damn, like this is what I needed. This is what I wanted. This is what I'm paying money for. This is the whole reason my search is ending now, right? I am in my dream. This metric is one of the key metrics in terms of being able to get people to pay, all right, convert. But not only that, their decision over the whole lifetime of their experience in the product to stay, because the delay of giving value to your user, your customer, is going to cause their interest to decay exponentially. There's no reason why they would spend a lot of time and effort, unless they already invested significantly into it, to figure out how to get what they need out of the platform. Human beings are fickle creatures. And really, ultimately, the moment they are finding out that, hey, I'm not getting what I need here, they're just going to peace out. All right. Especially with B2C apps, B2B, there's a little bit more upfront investment of their company buying it or whatnot. But ultimately, they're just not getting a positive experience, what they want out of it, as quickly as possible. it will be an uphill battle. They're just not going to adopt it. They're just not going to use it, right? So I want you to think about that activation. And if you have not thought about it, what are you doing to facilitate, particularly what we call time to value, right? TDV. Okay, so let's say they get the value, but kind of similarly related is like, how are they going to stay in the platform, right? So it's not just a matter of getting a one-time value. A software SaaS business, particularly when they're being acquired, one of the key metrics they look for is subscription revenue. The reason being is that reoccurring revenue is the greatest multiple of value for a SaaS business. That's different from any other business model. It's very different from other models. It's like there's only very few things you pay a subscription for, and software is one of the most common ones, right? So what people do is and they look at this as compounding, is that as you build more and more users and they're paying reoccurring revenue, the revenue is growing exponentially. They're compounding on top of each other. It's not that you're churned out and you need to get more customers in. The idea is that people are consistently paying more money. So if they're not staying on the product for whatever reason, maybe they get the one-time value, they've been activated, sure. But then what are they doing to use the product again? And then use it again, and then use it again, right? So if you don't have a stickiness, is what it's called inside the product, that's going to be a key reason why people don't stay in your product. The stickiness could be something related to having all their data in the product. Stickiness could be having a need to go back regularly. Again, they have a regular problem. I use Calendly as a previous example, which is ultimately, the need for scheduling meetings will never end for a sales team. They need to schedule it again and again and again. An interesting point of fact is that if you think about Tinder's retention model, you could assume that they don't want you to be in a relationship, because the longer they can get you to pay a subscription and stay on the platform, they don't want a happy ending for you. The best customer for Tinder is if you are perpetually unhappy with your people, or your people you're meeting with, or rather, let me say this, you're perpetually not ready to settle down. And so they really want those people that just are going to come back again and again and again and again. So, it's certainly an interesting food for thought, right? But you could think a lot about what are the things that products do to retain you, right? And ultimately, you should think about that same thing in your product as well. Revenue has a lot to do with your business model, right? Your pricing. There's this thing and concept of what's called a value metric. All right, a value metric you could think of is a number that is corresponding to a certain value being received. All right. So, for example, a value metric could be the number of people that can use the product at any given time, right? So that could be number of seats, right? Uh, it could be even how many times you're using a tool, and you could make it pricing based on credits. You could use it based on, how many, generations you could do, like, meaning like if you, how many outputs you can have from a certain tool, right? How many actions can you do, right? So there's a lot of different ways to do pricing according to, flat fee per month, right? So, you're thinking about a flat subscription thing. You could make it out of value metrics, but basically, ultimately, the question becomes, how do you make money, right? Why and when and how much would the customer pay? There's a lot I could go into here. Pricing itself is a very interesting topic, because pricing itself can be a growth mechanism. If you have a certain way of pricing that is appealing, that is very closely tied to the value metric that users are associating with, meaning that they are paying for the value that they get, they are more likely to pay for it because they're getting value and a direct exchange of it. And particularly those who are getting more value are paying a lot more. People who are getting less value paying a lot less. So there's some just, good coupling of incentives there. However, it's a very complicated, it can get a little hairy, and the trade-offs between, doing it. But it's just to say, like, you need to have a business model. You need to have a way that people are eventually paying, and how much are they paying and how are they paying. So you want to think about that. And finally, I want to talk about referrals. Referrals is at the end of the funnel, because obviously, like, people, there's no point in referrals if you don't solve for the other things. But the really interesting thing about the viral loops is purely related to how many people are sharing, because it has a compounding effect. One person shares it to two people share it to another two people, and then those people share another two people. And so what you have is this exponential growth curve of people who are willing to share the product to others, right? And so referrals become one of the most incredible growth mechanisms, and has to be considered. Is that what can you do to enable the users who are paying you money, who decided to stay, decided to part of your ecosystem? How can you get them to bring more people like them into the product? If you can accomplish this simple thing, it could be as simple as invite a friend, but it could be more deeper, like, be have them be part of your team, have them benefit by being receiving your referral, right? One of the key things that I've heard a lot about referrals that I think are really great is, someone who wants to refer wants to feel some sort of clout, some sort of good feeling of sharing something, because they feel like they've gotten some social value, they've helped out a friend. They're looking really smart, they're looking really advanced, that they've done something that other people aren't doing, and they need them to know, because they want to use these social kind of incentives. So referrals is something that a lot of founders don't think about in their product, but really is one of the easiest growth levers to implement, because it's just, you can build it, you can bake it into the product, right? And it just becomes a self-sufficient growth mechanism if you can solve the other things. So ultimately, as we talk about sort of this customer journey inside the product, it's really along these lens of, these parametrics of, if you can solve at these key phases, and solve those key problems, and you do this continuously for different segments inside the product or different tools, this will help guide the customer journey. And more importantly, you should ask yourself, are we tracking the right metrics associated with it? So this gets into the next piece, which is operations, and I'm happy to get into it. But particularly in the product, I want you to have a very clear view of the customer journey and thinking about it. Let's kind of close the loop. Let's talk about this last piece of the growth engine. We've successfully made it through a lot of pieces here, the foundations of the mindset, to the strategy, to the go-to-market, to the product. And so the only remaining piece we haven't talked about is the backbone. And this is the operations. This is what really completes the feedback loop. This is what ensures that whatever feedback we're receiving from the customer interviews, or the funnel metrics, or the product metrics, this is being integrated continuously into our approach. I guarantee you, no matter what you do, you will not do the right thing when you start. You will not do the right thing when you start, because when you think about all the variables that exist in building this business, right? There's so many different black boxes, things and that you don't know, but these are certain assumptions based on certain qualitative and quantitative data that you're trying to integrate into a product, into value delivery. And so there's so many things, variables, unknowns, that you will not know until you launch it. And that's okay. You're building a business because there's a pain point that hasn't been fully solved. And that means that if it hasn't been fully solved, there's things that people have not either fully internalized, or have been able to put together the pieces, or found it worth it to solve it. So you're as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you're venturing into the unknown for a reason. And so this requires some conviction, but also particularly the feedback loops. So what do I mean by the feedback loops? One is like particularly the customer interviews, right? The customer interviews, as I want to refer to it here, is how do you remove the bias from your own experiences? You'll be surprised at how badly I've seen conversations with customers go. Not for any explicit or overt reason, but ultimately it's often doesn't accomplish what the founder set out to do, which is to collect the data points that can inform the strategy, form the decision of what needs to be done. And oftentimes it's because what a lot of founders end up doing, rather, is that they end up talking about their product. I want to make this abundantly clear. No one wants to talk about the product. This is something that I was conveying in a strategy section. But the point is that what the ICP really cares about is they care about their dream. They care about like their current pain, all right? And they want to, and they care about the dream, being on the beach, right? So, to that end, right? What I want you to really double down on is like, tell me about your life, your ICP's life. Tell me about what is the dream that you're seeing? What is the possibilities that you see? How do you want to feel? What is really the thing that is trying to be, solved here, right? And ultimately, a lot of times what we focus on is the product, right? But ultimately, the product is not what the ICP is really thinking clearly about, right? The product is what you are building and you have built your whole life around in terms of building your startup around. But the product is not what the ICP is carrying because the product is something totally new. What they really know about is the pain, and what they really know about is what their dream is, right? Because they have been sitting in it for a while. So being able to draw that out, being able to just, hey, like, tell me about your life. Tell me about what are you going through in your day to day. What is the specific things, right? So this gets into like another good point here is that we need to be talking about specifics. All right. So we talk about life over product, right? The product is just a means to an end. Ultimately, they're living life, right? But the other thing is around specifics, right? You need to be specific. A lot of times there's these generalities and what do you think? What do you think about this solution? Well, the customer cannot give you what they think about a solution that they are not building, right? They're just thinking about their life, their problems, right? And one of the most common pieces of feedback is, yeah, that's interesting. It's very interesting, right? Because, they're not thinking about it tactically, literally. They're just thinking about it in a general and vague kind of way and future possibilities, which is, maybe it could help me. Maybe in this certain situation, in this way, in this scenario, it could help me a little bit. But really, what you'll find is that if you go and rush and build that product because you think this is a validation, what you'll find out is as soon as you ask them to take their wallet out and pay for it, they'll be like, oh, wait, but actually, we can't do it for this reason. I need my manager's approval, or I need this stakeholder engaged, or it doesn't have this data, or it doesn't have this feature. So one of the quickest ways to be specific is like telling them to pay money for it. Like, how much money would you pay for it? Right? Would you pay $10 for it? Would you pay $100 for it? 1,000, right? Would you pay for this specific thing? And quickly, the conversation will go from this vague level of general possibilities to very specifically yes or no, right? If you build it, yes, I'll pay for it, or if you build it, no, I'm not going to pay for it. Why? Well, let's talk about the specifics, right? The specific blockers. So a lot of times people are not having the right level of conversation because you end up talking about your product in vague and non-specific ways, in general possibilities and stuff, quite literally reality grounded conversations of actually spending money and integrating it into their workflow or into their lives. And the last thing, this is a general note, but it has to be said, which is listening more than talking, right? People want to share their stories. People want to share about their life and what they're struggling with. People love complaining. But oftentimes, because as founders, we're so passionate about the product that we're building, we just end up talking a lot more than listening. And, in these customer conversations, there's literal gold nuggets of information that can influence your entire product strategy that gets not done. So I really want you to pay it. This kind of customer interview, and there's a book called The Mom Test. I really encourage you to check it out. That gets into a lot more detail. If you want me to cover it, I'm happy to do it as well. But getting the feedback loop, the operations, as I mentioned, particularly around this piece over here for the strategy, doing the right type of customer interviews without the bias is so crucial. Let's talk about the other layer of operations and feedback loops, which is related to the funnel metrics. So this is a lot more straightforward, but it still is something that often doesn't get tracked, which is being able to track people in your marketing funnel, right? So your marketing funnel is based on your distribution channels. Are you tracking the right thing? Whether you're going to an in-person event or you're doing ads or you're doing cold emails, whatnot, are you tracking the right KPIs that is indicating about the direction of your go-to-market motion? Are you getting the right responses on your messaging or your positioning? Being able to track like how many people are coming in and out of your funnel, and where are people dropping off, where are people not converting, is a bunch of people coming into your ads, and then when they come into your landing page no one's booking a meeting. Well, that indicates something is up with your landing page that is killing your conversions. Or people are coming in, or they're coming into your landing page and clicking on a book meeting, but then right as they're about to do it they just drop off. So these things are really important to note, and the feedback loop is quite critical there, especially getting feedback on what is a messaging and positioning that's resonating or not resonating. That's where you're going to find a lot of your go-to-market experimentation falling in. Finally, product metrics. Product metrics is something that's really quite under delivered on, because for founders, it's a level of granularity that sometimes we end up trying to put a lot of intuition on. However, things like tools like Posthog or event-based systems like Mixpanel, all of them are kind of event-based anyways. But ultimately what happens is that when you're talking about the pirate metrics, ultimately being able to track who's using what feature, how many people are using it on a daily basis, what are they using or not using, what are the pages that they're going in. One of the really ways to use product metrics is to create what's called a churn profile, right? A churn profile is like, on average, what are the metrics that indicate that someone's about to cancel their subscription, right? Maybe they haven't used any features after 30 days, or maybe they've only used one time of a one use thing after 60 days. And so ultimately what happens is that you're able to predict like, hey, these guys, we need to really focus in on and catch them before they leave, and have conversations about, hey, what's preventing you from maybe activating, or what's preventing you from onboarding. So these product metrics gives you a level of clarity. There's a lot of other feedbacks, that loops that are really crucial here, customer success in terms of feedback, bug reports, incident reports. But these are some of the key ones across the entire product growth engine that are really important to keep track of. And why I consider the backbone, because you could do all these things, but without the operational visibility of what's going on, you're going to have a lot of difficulty understanding what to do next. All right. So ultimately, the point is not that, this is a one-time structure, but this is actually a continuous structure. It's going to be a continuous loop of work at different stages. It's going to require you to do different things and try out different pieces, expanding your strategy, or trying out different distribution channels, or working on different features. And what happens is, over time, you build an engine, right, for your growth. And it just is going to scale and scale and scale at different phases. So hopefully, we talked about a lot of different things, a lot of different pieces, but truly, like, if you're kind of having a sort of mental model here, you could start thinking about what you need to do to organize your SaaS business. I've built SaaS and grown SaaS for dozens of founders at this point. I love doing it. So if you want to have a conversation, I'll share my meeting link and we can have a conversation around it. If you want me to cover more topics, I'd be more than happy to cover it. But this is something that I've built my career around, and I just want to make sure that any early mid-stage founders who are looking for really tactical things about how to grow their SaaS business instead of fluffy abstract concepts and frameworks, I'm hoping this will be a good foundation to start. So it was a pleasure talking through it, and I'll see you on the next one.